Iran is on fire. Their supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead, along with almost every senior leader. But they're refusing to give up, and the US won't win this war for sure. But this will lead to a bigger conflict in the Middle East. Now, in the shadow of this headline war, there's a more sinister conflict brewing right now, and it's right next to Iran. I'm talking about Pakistan and Afghanistan, and it might be more important than you think. In February, Pakistan launched an airstrike inside Afghanistan. They even bombed Kabul and declared open war on their neighbors. But when their friends, remember Osama bin Laden? Pakistan gave him shelter before the US troops located him and killed him. To understand why Pakistan and Afghanistan are suddenly fighting and why this happened just as tensions with Iran exploded, you have to go back more than a century. You see, the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan were drawn by the British, who are famous for carving lines that create a century of bloodshed. It was called the Durand Line. It cuts straight through the Pashtun tribal lands. Pashtun is a big mountainous region where people speak the same language, they eat the same food, and basically have the same lifestyle. So the Durand Line cut through a big family and made them into two separate economies for no reason. Afghanistan never fully accepted it, but Pakistan always did. Since 2017, Pakistan began fencing large parts of that border, so the foundation of today's crisis was actually built into the map. For decades, Pakistan and Afghanistan Taliban factions were not enemies. During the Afghanistan Civil War in 1990, Taliban leaders emerged from networks that operated on both sides of the border. Many fighters studied in religious seminaries or madrasas in Pakistan. One of the most frequently mentioned is the Darul Uloom Haqqaniya, sometimes called in the West as the University of Jihad, because a lot of the senior Taliban members actually graduated from there. After the US invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, Taliban leadership and fighters found sanctuary across the border in Pakistan. And over time, Pakistani Pashtuns learned from their Afghani counterparts and from their own version of the Taliban, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP. Now, the TTP is undoubtedly a terrorist organization. They carried out some of the deadliest terrorist attacks in Pakistan's history. The most infamous one is the 2014 Army public school massacre in Peshawar, which killed 132 children. The TTP doesn't just want a separate Pashtun region, they seek to overthrow the entire Pakistani state and kind of establish their own version of an Islamic rule. For years, Pakistani military conducted operations to weaken the group, kill as many of the leaders as possible. Then in 2021, Afghanistan was taken over by the Taliban as Trump left with all the US troops. But seeing their Afghan counterparts achieve such success, the TTP thought they could also do the same in Pakistan. So they ramped up their actions, and as a reason, in 2025, Pakistan saw one of its most violent year of suicide bombings in a decade, mostly in that Pashtun region. Now, Pakistan and the UN say Afghanistan and the Taliban provided shelter to the TTP near the borders, but the Taliban government completely denies it. This disagreement is now at the center of this war. But even with this disagreement, that's not actually why Pakistan is declaring war on Afghanistan and why they're constantly fighting now and potentially could go into a full military war. That reason is India. Since last year, India and Narendra Modi suddenly become friendly with the Taliban-led Afghanistan, even without formally recognizing that government. Modi invited Taliban leaders to Delhi and pledged to open a new embassy in Kabul. He also promised funds for humanitarian aid, development projects, and trade discussions. Afghanistan, who has been facing economic isolation for decades, has encouraged deeper trade ties with India because it benefits them ultimately. But why India, an extreme Hindu nationalist country under Narendra Modi, and Afghanistan, an extreme Islamic nationalist country under the Taliban, why are they becoming friends? You see, Modi's biggest goal is to isolate Pakistan. He wants to create a trade corridor through Afghanistan and Iran, so India doesn't need to rely on Pakistan as a highway for trade. In 2024, India signed a 10-year contract to operate and develop part of Iran's Chabahar port. Chabahar allows India to access Afghanistan and Central Asia without passing through Pakistan. For Washington, the situation is complicated because the US has sanctioned Iran heavily. But India, after negotiations, received a conditional waiver to continue limited involvement in Iran's Chabahar port, and that permit is valid until April, which is next month. That deadline now hangs over the region. China already has a deep infrastructure relationship with Pakistan. They have a lot of key interests in Pakistan. They now also want to establish good relationship with Afghanistan. Now, all of this is bad for Trump and Israel because it creates new economic opportunities for both Iran and Afghanistan, two countries that it failed to control diplomatically for years. That's why we saw Israel's sudden invitation to Modi just days before attacking Iran. And now the US, through its ally Pakistan, wants to destabilize the Taliban government as much as possible. Because remember, Trump last year wanted to create an air base in Afghanistan, but the Taliban denied. So he doesn't have any military hold in that region right now after leaving it in 2021. So when this whole Iran smoke fades, whoever wins this war, do you think Trump will just sit back and say, yeah, we tried, now we're going to leave everything? No, he's going to go on full empire war mode to save his legitimacy and to satisfy his Zionist buddies. He will go on to the next war. And all the signs right now point to Afghanistan as the next target, a region that no one ever succeeded in invading or controlling, not even the Americans or the British.